The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, nothing gets you ready for a week ahead like somebody throwing a shoe into the crowd. Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. A full Austin Powers moment on Sunday. It's a glorious thing, the NBA. It's a glorious thing. So weird. Man. Eternally entertaining. Right? The people that say that they can't deal with the NBA regular season are watching it for all the wrong reasons. This is when you get to see the craziness of the NBA, the pettiness, the drama, the young guys, the upstarts, and Josh Richardson hurling a shoe into the crowd. Someone got a sweet souvenir, and then Richardson's going to have to he's going to get fined a substantial amount. So, double bonus. Something like that. Remember the double bonus? They have that in college ball, which is stupid. Single bonus and double bonus. I mean, come on, college. Just get it together. The women's college game has the right rules. The men's game is, it really is terrible. Outside of like the top 15 teams, it's really terrible. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. I'm Dan Bespers. This is a Hoop Ball presentation. We're also live on Dash Radio. Appreciate everybody that's finding us through Dash. If you'd like to, let's have a little crossover promo moment here on the podcast. If you're listening through traditional podcast channels, and you have access to Dash Radio, whether it's the Dash app on your mobile device, or maybe you have Dash built into your car stereo system. I know a lot of modern vehicles have the Dash app built in. You can listen to us there. I believe we are 11 a.m. Pacific time, Monday through Thursday, and then we've got the 5 p.m. Pacific time slot on Friday. So our Friday show, which is, of course, a repeat of our live YouTube show, that's myself and Aaron Brewski, that one's got some prime time airing on the Dash network. And if you're hearing us on Dash and you're wondering how to access us on a day you, say, miss a show, you can find us all places podcasts are distributed. The show is, of course, called Fantasy NBA Today. It is a Hoop Ball presentation. Should anybody else put out a show with the same name, you want the one by Hoop Ball. I am Dan Bespers, and the easiest way to find any of our stuff is to follow me at Dan Bespers on Twitter, at DanBesbris. It's goofy, it's Yiddish. You stick with it, and hopefully it'll turn up eventually. Or, and maybe this is the easiest one, because then you'll eventually find me this way, is to follow at Hoop Ball Fantasy. At Hoop Ball Fantasy on Twitter. Everything that we send out, all the podcasts, all the written stuff, all the injury alerts, all the fantasy news blurbs, they all go out over that Twitter handle. And I am in there from time to time. So if you can't spell my last name from hearing it audibly, which a lot of people can, it's the B's sound like V's and the S's sound like F's. And I've been called everything from Dan Debris to Dan Bieber to Dan Burbis. I used to get Burbis a lot, but it's Bespris. So hopefully you're finding us from Dash. We welcome you over here to the traditional podcast channels and vice versa. Thanks to our buddies over there for keeping all of the numbers straight for us. Today is Monday. We're getting started the week ahead. We've got a lot of things to cover on today's podcast, and I have this. This is the best. This is like the having too many options problem. I have about 45 minutes of awesome, I'll call it footage, I guess. It's audio with our good buddy Neil Rochlani, and I want to get that to you in the next day, maybe some of it even today. I'm going to be talking to Russ Peddle later on today, and that's going to air at some point this week. It's also Thanksgiving week, so things are going to get a little bit discombobulated later on in this week. Wednesday and Friday are both massive NBA cards, and I got to figure out how to put all these pieces together because we've also got a Reverse Chronological Lightning Round coming your way on today's podcast, and we got to get you ready for a Monday card that's really not too shabby either. How the hell do I get all this stuff done? Heaven only knows. Piece by piece. That's what I always tell my wife. Just you got a list of 15,000 things, just do the first one. Can't do them all at the same time, just do the first one. 9-game Monday card, that'll be later on in the podcast. We'll go over that. We've got Reverse Chronological Lightning Round of a very busy weekend with a number of things I thought that came up, particularly on a fun Saturday night. So, best thing to do at this point is just to do one thing at a time. And start with breaking news. Breaking news for Monday morning. Taurean Prince magically goes from doubtful to probable for tonight. Apparently, he looked much better in his workout on Monday morning. This is really unusual. As most fantasy sites and regular basketball sites will point out, doubtful to probable is very unusual. Usually you got a questionable tag in between there, and then usually you've got like a game time decision. Probable is a good thing. Probable means he's probably playing. If that wasn't super obvious, which I suppose it was. I would consider benching him for one game just to make sure he can actually make it through this one without the Achilles stuff kind of cropping back up again. It's not something you want to mess around with. Like, if there's any actual damage in his Achilles and he tries to play through it, that's how you can really hurt potentially other things as you kind of compensate a little bit. And, it's not like Atlanta has a whole lot to play for. So how do you weigh those two things? Yes, I'm doing the hand gesture that people do when they're weighing two stuff of both hands out in front of me, palms up, and flexing them up and down to signify that my arms are like a scale of justice. How do you balance those things? So my guess is Atlanta's not going to run him out there unless he really is good to go. So there's a possibility that as this day wears on, his probable could actually dial back to questionable, to game time decision, and maybe he does miss one more game. But if he goes, that means they really truly believe he's ready. And so I think I'd consider getting him in there. So I'm going to trust the Hawks on this one. Don't you burn me, you sons of guns. Don't you do it, Atlanta. You've done it before. I don't want you to do it again. Weirdo Atlanta Hawks injury reporting. Other breaking news. John Collins' minute limit is expected to raise to 18 tonight, so he's still not quite a start in standard leagues, but he's getting there. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is out at least one more game, and Victor Oladipo is out on Monday night, which means our little Darren Collison run can continue. And the hope here is that every time Darren gets an opportunity to just sort of play free and easy, that he will continue to do that. He's the one old guy on that Pacers team that I still have some confidence in. Because as bad as he's been, he's still sitting inside the top 150, and so he's very close. He's a handful, like a week of good games away from busting back into the top 100. It doesn't take much in November to move your number around. Anyway, I'm looking at this, I suppose, from the wrong standpoint. Those of you with Victor Oladipo, obviously get him on your bench. He says it's just sore, and he's not super concerned about it, but he did have to leave a game mid-game over the weekend, and now he's sitting out the next one, so they're giving him a second to get this thing right. He hasn't looked 100% this year. I mean, the Pacers as a team haven't really looked 100% this year, other than like Domantas Sabonis and Corey Joseph. Those two guys have actually looked pretty good. They're finding ways to win. I'll give them this much. They can punch their way through kind of a dumpy Eastern Conference, and they're 10-6 here in the early going, but they certainly haven't looked very good doing it. They've slowed games down. They're going defense first. It's really annoying. It's quite frustrating, actually, because I thought things would be a little bit more crystallized. Things haven't changed all that much. They added Tyreke Evans, basically, and that was the one big switch, and suddenly everybody's terrible. I mean, maybe you could have predicted that Tyreke would take some minutes from Bojan Bogdanovic and Darren Collison, but the fact that Thad Young has completely disappeared and Miles Turner has been terrible, Collison's been bad, even Depot's been not that great so far this year. He hasn't been as bad as the other guys, but I mean, it's certainly not what people were expecting when they took him like 10th overall. He's 30th in 9-cat right now. And it's not on the shoulders of bad turnovers. In fact, his turnovers are only at 2.3. The steals and blocks are both down from last year. The free throw percentage is terrible. The shooting percentage is down at 44. All of these things, everything has been a step back for Victor. Is it the injury? Is it just the fact that Indiana's totally changed the way they're playing? I'm inclined to say it's more the latter of those two things. They're just not playing fast basketball anymore. And it's a pisser. It's hurting all of them. It's hurting everybody. Except, again, basically Domantas Sabonis. He's like the one guy who's slipping through this thing because he doesn't need them to play fast to be successful. He's hitting 68% of his shots, and he's basically averaging a double-double off the bench in 24 minutes. Anyway, we're still in the breaking news portion of the proceedings. Can't even get to that part. Last bit of breaking news here in the morning. Trevor Ariza is back for the Phoenix Suns, which will reflect what we say about Mikal Bridges later on in this podcast, and that's as we go through the Reverse Chronological Lightning Round. Want to remind everybody that later on this week, most likely on our Monster Wednesday card, we will have the Beat the Expert contest with DraftKings. A 50-person room, once again, I believe. And if we fill it up again, then we can actually expand the room. DraftKings will give us permission to add more slots to the contest, which means more prize money. Ooh, baby. Cost of entry is $3 on these things. Right now, the top 10 pay $15 a piece. And the number one seed, when all is said and done, the winner of the contest also takes home a Hoop Ball t-shirt. The contest is not open yet as of Monday morning when we're recording this podcast, but by, I'm guessing, later on today, it'll be open and we'll start rapid-fire tweeting the links out. So make sure to follow us, as I mentioned earlier on the show. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, at HoopBallFantasy, at Dan Bespris, and we'll get you the info on that DFS contest. Reverse Chronological Lightning Round. This is a pastime here on Fantasy NBA Today. To those uninitiated, since I think those of you listening on Dash Radio, this is only your first or second Reverse Chronological Lightning Round, Monday edition, what we do is go through the weekend. Sunday first, then Saturday, and then if we have to, Friday, and basically just look at every single team, all 30, every team's most recent box score, and get you reset for the week ahead. The purpose of this is fairly straightforward. Obviously, if you know what's going on with all 30 teams, you have a pretty good foundation for what you can do, not only leading into your week, but also what you're going to be looking for as the week starts to take shape. For instance, Jonathan Isaac was a freight train over the weekend, and so going into this week, we're not really watching him all that closely, but we are watching the minutes for him. So we reset John, and then we plan for the future with John. And we're going to do this, that's the Orlando stuff, but we're going to do it for all 30 teams as we go through the weekend. The reason we do it starting most recently and working backwards is the most recent game for a team is the most important one for figuring out where they stand. There's no point in going Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If a team plays Friday, Sunday, their Friday game is just not that important when there's another one after it. Things change quickly in the NBA. We don't care about the stuff that happened 3 days ago. We want the stuff that happened 1 day ago. Okay. Jump right in. Sunday, only 5-game card. Nice little short thing, but not for lack of stuff going on. Memphis, Minnesota. The Grizzlies got JaMychal Green back, and they just continue to play outstanding defense. JaMychal Green played 21 minutes off the bench. Jaren Jackson Jr. played only 19 minutes as the starter, so they didn't even split fully the power forward minutes. There were 8 floating around elsewhere in that mix. And this is going to be a thing. For Jaren Jackson Jr. owners, this will be a little bit of a thorn in the side, where over the last couple of weeks, he just had free reign. He was a wolf loose in a chicken coop, doing whatever he wanted and posting massive numbers. Now there's going to be a little bit of a check on him, which is fine. He's still going to have an awesome season. No question about it. But right now he's sitting at top 65 value on a terrific first month of the year. Jaren Jackson Jr., he's shooting 50%, 13, 5, and over steal and almost 2 blocks a game. Just terrific numbers. But those are going to come back a tiny bit. You know, they were sort of buttressed by the fact that he was largely playing 25 to 33 minutes over the last 2 and change weeks since JaMychal Green went down. And he's just not going to have that sort of leash going forward. Would I recommend a sell? Hell no. He is absolutely the future. But just temper your expectations a tiny bit. It's probably not going to be like a top 30 couple of weeks. It may be a more consistent top 75 range, which is, you know, where he's averaged out to to this point in the season as well. Not a whole lot else on that Memphis side. Shelvin Mack closed out another basketball game. He didn't do a ton in this one, but he didn't hurt you much either. And Slow-Mo is basically there now. He's no longer a guy worth tracking. He's a zero-usage guy who finds his value elsewhere, and he looks like the Slow-Mo from last year. On the Minnesota side, now it's Dario Saric winning the how many minutes do we get at power forward battle over Taj Gibson, 2-1. Taj won the first one, Saric has won each of the last two, and neither one of them has posted fantasy value in any of those games. That's the real story from all of this. Rob Covington has been outstanding. Cat looks like he's been freed from some sort of weird shackles that Jimmy Butler had him under. Derrick Rose, as expected, is still getting plenty of opportunity because he's a Tibbs guy. Jeff Teague should be better in the next ball game, and Andrew Wiggins has been better this year than any of us expected, and I wonder if he can keep that up or if there's going to be a little bit of a regression there. Suffice it to say that Taj and Saric right now are both struggling a little bit. Dario played enough minutes in the game on Sunday to do stuff, and he did it 4 3-pointers in that one, but the other numbers for him severely lacking. There weren't too many rebounds because Cat took them all. 1 steal. He's not a big-time defensive stats guy anyway. 1 assist, no blocks. I'm still holding both of these guys to see how this whole thing shakes itself out. Like, there's very much a universe where Gorgie Jang just stops playing entirely, but it hasn't happened yet. And as long as Dario and Taj are splitting the power forward minutes, there's not probably in the long run going to be enough for either of them, but we have to make sure. You can't drop a guy that could eventually come back with value where you've seen sort of the proof that each one of those guys has done it before. These portfolio guys we like to talk about, the portfolio guys are ones that are tough to drop. So I think you're holding for a little bit. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, the names you expect, did stuff for the Portland Trailblazers, and that's the story in that one. Dwight Howard played 7.5 minutes, and then his butt started hurting, so he is out again. And a Woj report comes out first thing this morning saying that no one is off the table. The Wizards are looking to blow it up. The question is, can they get rid of any of these guys? Just keep an eye on things, because if one of the key pieces moves, somebody slots straight into a massive role increase. I'm looking at you, Thomas Satoransky. He put up a big line in only 19 minutes in that ballgame. It doesn't seem likely that they could move John Wall because his contract is kind of an albatross. If they move Bradley Beal, you start to get the feeling that Kelly Oubre might actually be able to post a consistent line. He does this stuff where, yesterday he actually looked very good. And the previous game he looked pretty good. But the 3 games before that he looked terrible. And a lack of consistency has really kept him from amounting to much at this point. He's still owned in 39% of leagues because he does pop off like this every once in a while. But until somebody in front of him moves, he's a top 130 guy. If somebody in front of him moves and his 25 minutes a game go up to 30 or 32, well, then you add 20% to all of his numbers and things start to look pretty juicy. That's a lot better. Then he's a 1-1-1 guy. So keep a close watch on whatever's going down in Washington. That's one of those spots where you might need to make a move the second the news breaks. And Kelly is he's the obvious choice. He's the obvious choice to jump into the whatever is available out there. Austin Rivers, even if one guy moves, to me, he doesn't become enough. He needs the whole backcourt gone to have fantasy value because all he does is score. Where at least with Oubre, you get the defensive stats, you get a little bit of rebounding, some assisting, some threes. There's a window there. And then Markieff Morris in the power forward spot, everything is just a disaster. What a disaster. The dam's going to break. New York, they had a new lineup starting on Friday, so they got to go twice over the weekend, and they sucked. They were terrible. Kevin Knox, awful. We keep telling you there's just nothing there. Mitchell Robinson was truly terrible in this game. He picked up 5 fouls in 9 minutes and just did nothing. And I still say you got to hold because he had a 9-block game. That's all you really need to know. If this guy could actually find a way to be on the court for 24 minutes a night, he would be an awesome big man value because he's going to be a high field goal percentage guy with big-time defensive stats, and those guys are rare. Those guys are rare, especially to find on the waiver wire, so you can't part with him yet. Ennis Cantor played 37 minutes in this thing to give you a little bit of a sell-high chance. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been fine. Trey Burke popped off a couple of times over the weekend. He had 31 on Sunday. And so Emmanuel Mudiay at point guard and Frank Ntilikina, they were toast. Trey Burke gets hot from time to time. You can ride it if you want, but I wouldn't. Tim Hardaway Jr. is the guy I'm starting on this team, and then Robinson's the guy I'm holding on this team. If you don't want to start him, I'm okay with that. Meanwhile, on the other side, Jonathan Isaac in back-to-back games over the weekend was just outstanding. Just so good. 16 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, a block in this one. He had 5 blocks in Orlando's win over the Lakers. The Magic are over 500, ladies and gentlemen. At 7-8, they lead the Hornets by a game in the Southeast. Can you believe that? Dark horse Orlando Magic. It's quite conceivable that teams start to game plan for them a little bit better, but they do have a lot of offensive options on that team. And finally, in Jonathan Isaac, they have a guy who can defend. This is a game changer. So he's going to be good, and Terrence Ross is going to be garbage now. His run is over. Lakers destroyed the Heat. Josh Richardson got ejected throwing a shoe. LeBron has been going bonkers lately. He had 51 in this ballgame with a last-second three-pointer Jamal Murray style. KCP, however, is the name that I want to mention on the Lakers side. He's been showing signs of life, and with Rajon Rondo out for a month, I wonder if this is that weird little extra bit of room that he needed to start to do something. He's 38%. This is a weird note, by the way. He's 38% owned in Yahoo leagues, despite being outside the top 200 so far this year. And he is owned in 0% of my leagues. Nobody has him in any of the leagues that I'm in. In the 2 games without Rajon Rondo, he's played 28 minutes twice. This is intriguing. Over the last 2 weeks, he scored in double figures 5 out of their 6 ball games. He's just outside the top 100 over the last 2 weeks. And over the last week, he's inside the top 70 in 9-cat, largely because he's committed 3 total turnovers in those games over 2 weeks. He's not doing much besides scoring and hitting 3-pointers and a very small smattering of steals. But what you might have here is a 1-month window of a 3-and-D guy. And these guys surface and go away all season long. The beauty of it is, if you pick up a guy like KCP, you could trade someone like PJ Tucker or Garrett Temple or Evan Fournier, even, if you want to go a little bit higher on the pecking order. These are guys that all do similar stuff that have sort of proven themselves, and by the time KCP goes back to not having value, someone else will probably pop up. That's just how it works. So consider trying to trade some of your 3-and-D guys, because other ones, like KCP, surface and then go away every 3 or 4 weeks. Would I pick him up right now? Nah, sort of not that pressing, really. Lakers are off for a couple of days anyway. They don't play today or tomorrow. They play Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday of this week. By the way, nobody plays on Thursday. Wednesday, Friday, Sunday for the Lakers. So, if you want to sit on it for a couple of days, I'm okay with that. But, they've got Cleveland. They've got a rematch against Orlando mixed in there. And if he really is going to start taking a whole bunch of shots, which he absolutely did in that game in Miami, he took a bunch of shots. 11, in fact, 4th most on the team, behind LeBron, Ingram, and Kuzma. Josh Hart played 29 minutes also, by the way, if you're worrying who it came at the expense of. Nobody really. Lonzo Ball, maybe. Lance Stevenson didn't play much. I mean, the minutes are there. The Lakers don't have to play a traditional point guard because they have Bron and Ingram, who can both basically run the offense. LeBron, obviously, far better in that regard. But there is a universe here where KCP can actually post some value. We've seen him do it before, guys. He's not someone who needs the basketball in his hands to be wildly successful. Look at the last 3 years, basically. 1.5 steals per 36, which is good. Right around 30, about 5 or so rebounds per 36. He's about an 80% free throw shooter in his career. He hit 2 3-pointers a game last year. He was a solid late round value last season. So don't write him off. This is the first thing we've seen out of LA from a fantasy standpoint in like a month. So keep an eye on it. Even, by the way, though there is a timestamp on this thing, that doesn't mean you can't get a good month run out of a dude, especially in Roto, where you just roll up stats. Who cares when they come and go? Josh Richardson threw his shoe into the crowd, and Wayne Ellington had 5 3-pointers with Dwayne Wade out. I'm still waiting to see what the hell happens with this team when Wade comes back. Goran Dragic out with a knee issue. It's really, nobody knows, frankly, how bad it is. Rodney Magruder continues to rumble along. Hassan Whiteside was okay, but not spectacular. He did have 3 blocks in this game. Tyler Johnson has actually been the guy to pick up some slack with Goran Dragic out, because I think Miami's realized that Justice Winslow is terrible. He's just not good. And they keep forcing him into the mix, but he's just not. He's a liability on that team. A lot of guys that I want to watch on this Miami team. They're moving back into the spotlight for us because I think someone's going to surface. Whether it's Ellington with the 3-point specialist stuff, whether it's Tyler Johnson, who a couple years ago we saw was actually pretty good from a fantasy perspective, putting up defensive stats to go along with points, threes, and a little bit of assisting. Rodney Magruder's been fine all season long. You're sitting on him. James Johnson played his first action of the year, had 8 points, 2 3-pointers, and a couple of assists in 15 minutes, and I actually thought he was moving relatively well. He had a couple of little quick jab steps and spins that he didn't do at all last year. And, the question becomes now, how many of these guys can actually exist on the floor? Because, again, Josh Richardson threw his shoe into the crowd in the third quarter and didn't play the last 8 or 9 minutes of his action for the day. Who got all of those minutes? Was that all Tyler Johnson? Was it Wayne Ellington? Was it a mixture of both? The one thing we can say for sure is that James Johnson, at power forward, his competition of Justice Winslow is beatable. It's beatable. So James Johnson I've got an eye on. Wayne Ellington I've got an eye on because, what if he holds his role, a team that needs outside shooting at times, and he can hit a whole bunch of them. He's an outstanding specialist if that's what you need. What if it's Tyler Johnson? A lot of this, of course, depends on Dwayne Wade coming back and whatever Goran Dragic stuff is. There's knee swelling. He's had an MRI. We sort of don't know. But a lot of these guys in Miami are sort of on the table now, and a team that, frankly, needs to blow it up. They're not good. They're not good. They have stagnation syndrome. They're just not good. So I don't know that I'd make any moves immediately with this Miami side, but I would keep a very close watch on them because you could see James Johnson pop up. We know he's done it before. He's a 1-1-1 kind of guy who can rebound and assist when things are going right. We know Wayne Ellington can be a specialist. We know Tyler Johnson has the ability to put up numbers. The question is, how long is Dragic out? What is Dwayne Wade's role when he comes back? And can they blow it up? Golden State loses in San Antonio. Things have fallen apart for the Warriors with Steph Curry out. He is their everything, and then no Draymond Green in this one either, so rough go. Quinn Cook and Kevin Durant were both solid, if unspectacular. KD couldn't get his shot to fall, and the Spurs got a much-needed win. Rudy Gay had 19 and 5 with 3 blocks in the starting lineup. If he sticks in the starting 5, things could be really nice for him. And Derek White did nothing in this game. He fell behind Bryn Forbes in the pecking order and Patty Mills. And this was something that I was worried about, a 3-man timeshare at point guard. It looked like White was going to be able to separate himself in his first couple of games back, but now he's sort of fallen on hard times. I'm okay if you guys want to move on from Derek White. I mean, he was always sort of a top 100 potential kind of guy. He was never going to be a difference maker. So if somebody really good is surfacing on your waiver wire, and I'm not talking about like these fringy guys like a KCP. I mean, you could make an argument in both directions on that one. But if somebody pops up that has big-time upside potential, then yeah, I'm totally fine with moving on from Derek White. Moving back to Saturday, the Clippers getting a win on the road in Brooklyn. This is a couple games in a row now. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has not looked good. He was in foul trouble in this one, but his last 2 games he's been quiet. And this was a fear. With rookies, there are always going to be ups and downs. His stat set was not fully rounded out. Like, you knew the blocks were not going to last at the clip they were going. He's a very long guard, so he's going to get more blocks than like Damian Lillard, obviously. But 1 steal, 3 blocks, that kind of thing, that's just not going to be happening every night. So it continues to be this, I don't fully know that you can trust the Clippers' backcourt. Lou Williams is a guy you can throw into your lineup. He's going to always buffer his stuff with great foul shooting. Patrick Beverley has actually looked a little bit better over the last couple of games. He's a more Pat Beverley type line. He's still sitting outside the top 150 on the season, and he's in that 115 range over the last week, and he's just inside the top 100 over the last 2 weeks because he had that 21-point game mixed in there. There just sort of isn't enough offensively, and his steals haven't been there so far this year. So that's the real weird thing with Pat Bev. But you're watching him, you're watching Gilgeous-Alexander. They're just, someone else needs to go down, and I hate to phrase it like that, but Avery Bradley's probably coming back before somebody else gets hurt. Meanwhile, on the Brooklyn side, Rondae Ellis-Jefferson only got 12 minutes in this game, and that is extremely disconcerting. I'm moving on. This is all I needed to see. Alan Crabb played 30, so he seems to be perhaps the greatest beneficiary here of the Karis LeVert injury, at least at a glance. Spencer Dinwiddie and D'Angelo Russell continue to get bumps with LeVert out, but Crabb was the guy who got the minutes in this game, and we know his fantasy game is limited. He's all three-pointers. All three-pointers. He is effectively a more consistent version of Wayne Ellington right now. Is he going to play 30 minutes a night going forward? I don't know. I just don't know. Things look an awful lot like they did a couple years ago in Brooklyn, where suddenly everybody's playing 25 minutes except for like 2 guys. We'll keep an eye on things, obviously. We're going to keep an eye on stuff, and maybe Crabb does separate himself. He worked his way into, last year I think he was like a top 110 kind of guy when all was said and done because he hit so many three-pointers, but not much on the defensive side, not much besides threes. And that's a tough bird. We were hoping it'd be RHJ because he can do other stuff, but it doesn't look like he's their guy. He might pop off every now and again, but the in-between stuff is going to be a little difficult. Atlanta at Indiana. This was the one where Victor Oladipo exited mid-ball game. We mentioned it briefly during our discussion of Victor's sore knee costing him the Monday evening game, the game coming up tonight. And Darren Collison was good. The starters didn't play big minutes. This is one that they had well in hand. Atlanta ended up cutting into the deficit late in the fourth quarter. But Collison had 12 points, 2 threes, 5 assists, 2 steals. The only thing that kept him from this being a perfect Collison night was the fact that he went 4 for 10 instead of 5 for 10. He was one made bucket away, and he'll be solid with Oladipo out. Everybody else is still a giant question mark for this team. It's the darndest thing. Tyreek Evans had one big game, and then he turned back into a pumpkin. In this one, Thad Young had 11 and 7, but he missed a bunch of shots in a weird turn of events. Miles Turner had 10 and 11 with 3 blocks, but missed both of his free throws. There's just no consistency other than Domantas Sabonis, who had 9 and 16 with 6 assists in this game. He's been great. I don't know. I am inclined to say that with Oladipo out, we should play the Pacers that we have, because that frees up so much stuff, and somebody's got to do something, right? Right? I mean, somebody has got to do something. They play Utah, which by all accounts should be a relatively low-scoring game, but competitive. So the starters should get some minutes in the fourth quarter, I hope. And whatever is available is going to go to those main guys. So, yeah, I am trotting my Pacers out tonight, and I'm praying. Meanwhile, on the Atlanta side, our old pal Jeremy Lin just keeps doing enough to stay on the radar. He's been much better here over the last couple of ball games. Over his last 6, he's played 22, 22, 15, 20, 25, and 24 minutes. And in that stretch, he has definitely done enough to be on your fantasy team. He's been top 100 over those 6 games. Over the last week, he's been just outside the top 100 because of those 3.3 turnovers, but his other stuff, 2.3 three-pointers, 14, 4, and 4 with over a steal per game in 23 minutes a night. It's what we've been saying since day one. He just needs 24 minutes to be a top 100 guy. He's starting to get scooped up, by the way. If you haven't noticed this already, Jeremy Lin, his ownership is up to 16% in all Yahoo leagues, and he's owned in 60% of my important leagues. So I'm running out of time to pick him up. Everybody apparently is listening to this podcast. You jerks. You guys know how closely I've been watching Jeremy Lin. I think he's a pickup. I think he's a pickup right now. I mean, the 16, 4, and 4 with 3 steals, that's obviously more a high water mark. But Trae Young has been bad in his learning curve. The popcorn numbers are going to be there for Trae. The popcorn numbers are there. He's averaging 16 and 8, but he's shooting 39% on a high volume. He's averaging 4 turnovers a game. He doesn't have any steals or blocks on the year. He's just not really helping that team. And so, as we said during draft season, they're going to need Jeremy Lin to come in and stabilize things, and that's what he's been doing lately. And he was really good in this ball game. He's a stat magnet. So is Kent Bazemore on a night-to-night basis. John Collins made his return. He played 12 minutes. As we mentioned, that's up to 18, so he's getting closer. A lot of guys are going to get knocked out of the mix. I actually think that Collins coming back and Prince coming back and just this team getting good players back on the floor is really going to be good for all of them. Because now, hopefully, Taurean Prince doesn't have to shoot 38% on, 15, 16 shots a night. They'll be competitive, and that means that guys are going to get more important minutes. Alex Len and Dwayne Dedmon continue to split the center minutes on this team. But yeah, I'm picking up Jeremy Lin. I don't know if I'm starting him, but I think you got to grab him. He looks healthy. And if he's going to sit at that 24-minute mark, he's a fantasy guy. Denver, New Orleans. Some coming out of this ballgame, too. Juan Hernangomez was a guy we were definitely watching going into that Saturday slate. I mentioned it in a tweet that just said, hey, look, who among Juan Hernangomez, Juancho, or Monte Morris, who's going to be the guy that sort of emerges? And, in this one, it was both because Paul Millsap didn't play particularly well. But Juancho's been excellent. He had 20 and 11 in this ballgame. He's been playing big minutes for this club. Monte Morris has actually been pretty good, too. Much better, by the way, in 9-cat than 8-cat because of his crazy assist-to-turnover ratio. But I think the thing that you like about Hernangomez is the huge minutes and the fact that he can actually get you some popcorny numbers, too. His last 2 games, which, again, this is unsustainable, 25 and 20 points. But I don't know that the rebounds are necessarily unsustainable. He's played 39, 31, and 35 minutes in his last 3 ball games, and he's averaging 10 rebounds a game in those 3. Defensive stats are not that huge for him, but he needs to be owned. I think Monte Morris probably, you need to consider owning him as well because of the great assist-to-turnover ratio. He's not going to get as many scoring opportunities out there. He's doing more distributing. And so Denver, we're finally getting a very small bit of clarity on who's going to do stuff while Will Barton is out, who, by the way, Will could be out another month. Groin stuff is serious business. Am I starting any of those guys? I don't know. I think they're guys that you definitely need to have on your team. If you're feeling saucy, they play Milwaukee today, so Juancho's going to be dealing with Giannis. That's not a great matchup. I believe he started technically at small forward, so maybe you could argue he's going to be guarding Chris Middleton. But anytime Paul Millsap is not on the floor, generally you're seeing Juancho play power forward minutes. And, of course, with the way things have turned now, that's pushed Trey Lyles way out to the periphery. Monte Morris is your efficiency guy. Juancho Hernangomez is your popcorn guy. That's what you're looking at right now. Nothing interesting on that New Orleans side. Elfrid Payton, obviously, with the broken finger, he's out long-term, but he really hasn't played much this year anyway, so nothing changes. Philly with a last-second buzzer beater from newly acquired Jimmy Butler. They get a win over Charlotte on the road, despite Kemba Walker blowing up for 60 in this game, which moved Kemba, by the way, back into the top 10 for the year. Jeremy Lamb, 20 and 10. He played 40 minutes in this game. Cody Zeller, 10-7 with 4 assists. He's starting to get dropped in certain formats because he's boring, and I can understand that. He's truly a boring center to have on your team, but suddenly he just became available in 2 out of every 5 leagues. It's the darndest thing because he's just a snooze. But he's a top 100 center, which actually makes him a relatively valuable asset because centers are hard to come by. He's efficient. His free throw shooting has actually gotten better this year. He's not rebounding enough for my taste. That's the one thing where I think if I'm looking at you, I'm like, Cody, you got to go out there and get 6+ rebounds a night, not 5.5. This 5.5 stuff is just not going to cut it. You're the starting center. Who are you losing these rebounds to? Who's taking them from you, Cody? Dwight Howard's not there. Seriously, you're going to let Jeremy Lamb and Kemba Walker get 17 rebounds and you're going to get 7? You got to out-rebound those guys, especially Kemba. He's a little dude. So Zeller, I'd like to see a rebound or 2 more per game. He did foul out of this one, but it's nice to see his minutes on the rise as they realize that Bismack Biyombo, Willie Hernan-Gomez, and never plays Frank Kaminsky are just awful. They're just not good. So, yeah, I mean, I can't believe that I'm talking about this, but he should absolutely be owned. Cody Zeller is not a guy that should be sitting on a waiver wire, and suddenly he is in multiple places. Weird. Very weird. Otherwise, we're seeing the things develop that we expected. Malik Monk has taken a backseat to Jeremy Lamb because Malik has a very nice shot, but that's literally all he can do at this point of his career is shoot. Jeremy Lamb can do other stuff. He's a slasher, great at getting the foul line. He plays some better defense. He's longer. I don't know what's going on with Nick Batum. He's a wreck. I think you got to keep starting him, but he's really disappeared. That's rough. Meanwhile, on the Phillies side, Mike Muscala started and played 37 minutes, but remember, Wilson Chandler was on a back-to-back and had a minutes restriction. Those 2 guys right now look like they're going to be splitting the power forward minutes in Philly. My hope is that Muscala can separate himself because he can do some stuff on the defensive end, but so far that hasn't happened, and in the next ballgame we'll get some more information on that. Utah and Boston, not a whole lot to take away from this ballgame. You're seeing the fade of Jay Crowder, you're seeing Derek Favors just barely hanging on to value, but otherwise things are fairly straightforward. Nice win for the Jazz on the road against the Celtics, who continue to have too many mouths to feed. Sacramento, Houston. Houston's figured things out now, guys. And it wasn't Melo. Yes, I know he was part of the problem, but getting rid of him was not the entire solution. They're just starting to play better. Chris Paul is shooting better. His field goal percent on the year is normalizing after a very slow start. He was shooting 41%. Now he's up closer to 44%. He's a career 47% guy. Still can't make his free throws for some reason. Did have 8 turnovers in this game that got very ugly. But he and James Harden, the guys that are important on this team, are settling in. The other notes from this basketball game are, to me, the more important stuff. And that is, number one, we were watching James Ennis, and he played 27 minutes, just didn't do much with it. That's the fear with Ennis. Can he get just over that threshold? Can he get just enough opportunity to make using him worthwhile? And my initial answer is probably not, because he falls behind Harden, Capella, and Paul, obviously, and then on most other nights, Eric Gordon and PJ Tucker, which means as a 6th offensive option, you have to basically make all of your three-pointers to be relevant, because he's not going to be, you're going to get some steals out of him and a block every now and again, and same deal with Gary Clark. There just sort of isn't enough there. PJ Tucker is the guy you trust because he plays more minutes than the other 2 guys. He rebounds better than the other 2 guys. And if not for the 4 turnovers in this ballgame, he would have had the better fantasy line as well. So right now, I'm out on Ennis and Clark in standard, 12-team, 15-slot roster leagues, that type of deal, 180 deeps, because you're starting guys that are going to be inside the top 100. That's your goal, and those guys are not right now. Sacramento side, I'm out on Bjelica. The whole Jaeger under fire for not playing enough Marvin Bagley thing is going to kill Nemanja Bjelica's value, and he's been trending down anyway. Marvin Bagley, you probably do need to own for the chance he goes big in the popcorn stuff. He's not going to do a whole lot in the defensive end of the floor, but he's going to be taking shots, And, that's useful in some formats. You're holding on Bogdan as he continues to ramp up. You can see the stat set is nice for him. Buddy Hield, De'Aaron Fox, the other guys, and then Willie Cauley-Stein will be better in the next one. But to me, Bjelica he's expired. His full season rank is still being propped up by that crazy hot first 3 weeks, but his last 2 weeks have just been atrocious. He's sitting outside the top 150 over that stretch, and sorry, even in 9-cat, there just isn't much use for that. I know the turnovers are low, but you got to get something out of your guy, and he's out of the rotation, despite starting. I mean, he started this game and played 14 minutes. That's hard to do, to start and only play 14 minutes. Toronto, Chicago, Danny Green went 7 for 7 in this game. Oh, my boy. Oh, I love that, Daniel Green. You are my hero. He is a top 65 fantasy asset on the season right now, and there's no reason to think that this slows down. He's just been awesome. He's been awesome. He had those couple of games where he had a whole bunch of turnovers and then his back was hurting, but he looks better. There's nothing else to take away from this game. This was a hideous blowout. Chicago was never in it. Chicago had 5 of their top guys out. So, yeah, rough times for old Chi-Town. I liked the over for this team, but I also didn't realize that their whole starting 5 was going to be out for the first 2 months of the year. Oops. Denzel Valentine, Lauri Markkanen, Chris Dunn, Bobby Portis, all those guys are expected back within the next, I'd say, 2 to 3 weeks. And then things change considerably, and we'll watch Chicago closely as their guys start to make their way back into the rotation. Dallas has been without Wesley Matthews for a couple of games. The only reason that's a note is because Dorian Finney-Smith is playing 40 minutes a night, and you could stream him if you want, as long as Wesley Matthews is out. Oklahoma City at Phoenix. Paul George is going ham with Russell Westbrook on the shelf. Russ is expected back, which means it's time for Dennis Schroeder to go back to being outside the bubble in 9-cat formats. He's going to be great in 8-cat. I mean, those turnovers are obscene. He's at 3 a game right now, and he's shooting only 41.5%. In 9-cat, he's just inside the top 100 because of those stat set limitations. And when Westbrook is healthy and Schroeder's minutes go from 35 a night back down to 26 or 27, that's enough to knock his popcorn stuff below the threshold where the bad stuff then becomes too bad. In 8-cat, yeah, run him out there. Do whatever you got to do. But 9-cat, Schroeder becomes probably a drop, but you might be able to get something for him because people love the name value. Meanwhile, over on the Phoenix side, and this is the one that kills me, Mikal Bridges. The hope was that he would not go big in this game, but he did, and so he ended up getting picked up in a bunch of spots, and that's annoying because we were hoping to get him later in the year when they really turn him loose. His ownership is up to 13%. It was at basically 0 prior to Trevor Ariza missing a couple of nights. Bridges is not going to play big minutes when Ariza is in there, and TJ Warren. He's behind those two guys to get in there at either small forward or power forward. So he's going to fall back beyond the cut line. The hope is that other people will now cut him because he's owned in 4 out of my 5 money leagues. Yes, 13% of Yahoo leagues, but 80% of Dan's important leagues. I think he's going to get dropped in basically all of those, provided Ariza and Warren can play for a month straight. But if they don't, then he's a guy with awesome fantasy potential, and it just kills me that he went big this early because I didn't get him in most of those spots, and I was hoping until Phoenix just went young, closer to the All-Star break, to kind of turn him loose. Elsewhere, TJ Warren is the man. 23 points, 5 boards, a steal, block, 2 3-pointers. He's just been incredible so far this year. I know Bruce got him as more a top 75 kind of guy. I have slightly higher hopes. Maybe top 50 would be a best-case scenario. Top 60 is probably more reasonable as the free throw number comes back from 90 closer to his career mark. But he's been so freaking good over the last 2 weeks. A top 10 fantasy player over that stretch. And that's just amazing because, we picked him up in some spots. Remember 2 weeks ago, we were like, you got to pick him up and see where this goes. And he's been top 10. It's crazy. Devin Booker had 11 assists in this game and only 1 turnover. That's actually a really good thing for him. They lost, but the assist-to-turnover ratio is what holds him back most nights. that and field goal percent. And if he can eliminate one of those two bugaboos, then things get a lot better for him. Oof, Saturday was fun, wasn't it? Saturday was a good card. We had a lot of interesting things surface on the Saturday portion of the Reverse Chronological Lightning Round. Quick check on Friday here to make sure we're not missing any teams. And the answer is no. We good. We good. What about tonight? We turn our attention to the upcoming evening. Hey, wanted to mention, by the way, earlier in the podcast, I talked about our DFS contest. You know, you can actually get into that contest. If you're opening a new account at DraftKings, you can also get the Hoop Ball season-long membership for free as a side bonus. All you got to do is go to hoop-ball.com, click on the Premium tab, choose Go Premium, and then I know this is like too many steps, and I do this on all the podcasts, but this is the way it is. Premium tab, Go Premium, and then there's an option that says Get Premium Free. Click on that. Click on that one, and that'll take you to the Hoop Ball DraftKings promo page, where all you got to do is basically navigate through to DraftKings from the link at the bottom of that page, open a new account, put $10 in it, and you get the Hoop Ball Premium membership too. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's a $20 value. $25 value, I think. Am I getting that right? I think it's a $25 value. And you get it for, at the very least, $10. That's a worst-case scenario. You put $10 into DraftKings and you get the $25 Hoop Ball Premium membership. If you use that $10 at DraftKings, which, by the way, will get you 4 $3 contests because they give you a bonus freebie, all you got to do is get in the top 10 in any of those 4 Hoop Ball contests you play in. You'll win $15, and then you'll actually end up money with the premium membership on top of it. It's a pretty sweet deal. That's at hoop-ball.com. Premium, Go Premium, get Premium free. And I also want to take a moment here before we talk about Monday to get down on bended knee and once again request you please subscribe to the podcast. And if you like what you hear, rate and review the show. We appreciate every single one of those. Monday's card, it's a 9-game slate. Philly, 11.5-point favorites at home to the Phoenix Suns. Don't want anything to do with this ball game. Boston by 3 in Charlotte. Detroit, a 10-point home favorite to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Utah, 3.5-point favorites on the road at Indiana. That, of course, a line dictated largely by the absence of Victor Oladipo. Clippers, 8-point favorites in Atlanta. The Pelicans are giving away 7.5 against the Spurs, who are on a back-to-back in this one. Memphis, 3-point favorites over Dallas. Milwaukee by 5.5. And then Oklahoma City, 2.5-point road favorites in Sacramento. My only real thought on this card comes from that last ball game, and this one's going to have some conflicting feelings. It sounds like Russell Westbrook could return, that he missed that last game more for personal reasons than for the lingering ankle stuff. When a superstar comes back, I like to fade that team. However, Sacramento also beat Oklahoma City in the second game of the year in Oklahoma City, and that's the type of weird stuff that I don't think Westbrook or the Thunder like to forget about. Although Russ, if memory serves, was that his first game of the year that lost to Sacramento? Yeah, I think that was where he made his return, and he put up 32 and 12 in that ball game, and they lost to the Kings. So if he's coming back, I think he's going to be pretty irritated that the Kings beat him at home by 11. Thunder have been playing better of late, and that's my lean. Sacramento, to me, is a team that's been fading a tad. Not that they're, like, falling apart or anything, but they've lost 2 in a row. I think teams are starting to make some adjustments on the Kings to try to slow them down a tad, and so, you know, the revenge angle points me a little bit towards Oklahoma City. The return of the superstar points me a little bit towards Sacramento. I think I would lean towards the Thunder in a game that, unfortunately, is not a great line. I was hoping this would be closer to a pick'em, but, you know, that fleeting hopes, I guess. But to me, you take two teams that are kind of pointed in different directions a little bit. Kings, as we mentioned, have lost 2 in a row. The Thunder have won 3 in a row, largely against terrible competition, mind you. But they've also won something like in 6 of their last 7 or 9 of their last 10 or something like that. Thunder have actually been very good outside of one really ugly game in Dallas. And to their credit, they've capitalized on kind of clunky portion of the schedule, but they also beat Houston and New Orleans mixed in there as well. So slightly into the Oklahoma City Thunder. From a fantasy standpoint, the fun continues here. Phoenix, we're watching because of the return of Trevor Ariza. What does that do to Mikal Bridges? Philly, we're watching the power forward minute split. Charlotte with no MKG. Does that mean that Marvin Williams can actually be okay? Probably not. Probably not. Cleveland, what's going on there? Do we get some more David Nwaba? I hope so. He looked really good in those last 2 games, and they haven't played in forever. Actually, that was a team we didn't talk about during the Reverse Chronological Lightning Round because they haven't played since like Thursday. Same with Detroit, I think. They haven't played in forever, but they're also super uninteresting. So Cleveland, we're watching like a hawk because we saw Nwaba play well. Tristan Thompson's been going big from the center position. Colin Sexton's been scoring a lot, but not doing much else besides that. They're interesting at the very least. Utah, Indiana, we're watching, of course, without Victor Oladipo. Can the usual guys get something going for the Pacers? Clippers backcourt. Atlanta, the return of John Collins continues here. Any more Jeremy Lin sightings? San Antonio, what's going on with the point guard spot? Memphis, the Jaren Jackson Jr., JaMychal Green situation developing now. Denver, Juancho Hernan-Gomez and Monte Morris, how do they impact things? And then we've already talked about Sacramento a little bit during the Reverse Chronological Lightning Round, but what's going on there with Bagley and Bielitsa and Bogdan and the whole thing? So a lot of stuff to keep an eye on this week. It's a weird kind of up and down week. I decided, by the way, to hold off because Reverse Chronological Lightning Round always takes a long time. You will hear from our good friend Neil Rochlani tomorrow. That'll be on tomorrow's podcast because that segment is so nice and beefy. We talked trades. Oh, it's a good one. You're going to enjoy it. That we can do the Monday recap and a short Tuesday slate around the Neil portion. I think that's what's going to work out well for us on tomorrow's show. Thanks again to Dash Radio. Thanks to everybody for listening. Follow me on Twitter at Dan Bespris. And, of course, rate and review the podcast if you have a moment. And for heaven's sake, join our DFS contest whenever that thing comes out. I know, not that I even have to tell you anymore, that last one filled up with hours to spare, so I think we could have gone bigger. And on a huge Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, you guys are all going to be sitting around with your you-know-what in your hands and just looking for something to do, and I think that's going to be a great thing to do it. But, of course, if you're doing it for a first time, get that new account at DraftKings through Hoopball and get the season pass for free. I want to be like that mattress guy. I don't want to be like that mattress guy. At Hoopball Fantasy, at Hoopball Tweets, at Dan Bespris. Thanks again, everybody. Have a wonderful Monday. I love it, man. There's so much going on the fantasy landscape right now. We're into the thick of things. Every time it seems like the season is hitting just like a 2-day lull, then all sorts of new stories emerge, and we can exploit those as well. Homework for tonight. My God, I almost forgot to assign you guys a homework assignment with all these games going on and so many things to watch. My homework assignment is Cleveland because I'm really interested in David Nwaba. I know that that's a super weird thing to say, but he has the kind of fantasy game that I just adore. I adore it. Denver, I want you to watch that one. That's going to be a good ball game, so I shouldn't have to convince you to watch Denver, Milwaukee. And then Clippers, Hawks. Those are the 3 ones that jump out to me as the most interesting and the ones where we could see fantasy implications literally by halftime. There's your homework. We'll grade your papers tomorrow. Have a great Monday.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.